There's definitely a lot going on this morning. Let's go up to the NMI and check in with our man in Saipan, Tomas Manglona. Good morning, Tomas.
Hi, Tomas.
Good morning, Bree and Chris. What a week it's been.
I know.
What a day it's been. I mean,
Today's Thursday. Oh, man. I know things are really starting to get pretty crazy over there. So what's the latest?
Yeah, and so as we've reported yesterday, the NMI Coronavirus Task Force announced that the death of a 70-year-old man on the island of Saipan announced on Monday is confirmed to be COVID-19. So what this means is that it's the first COVID-19 death related in the NMI. And the results came in early yesterday with news of more cases on Saipan. The current numbers, 4 new cases, including the deceased 70-year-old male. The others are 3 females, one 77-year-old, one 60-year-old, and the youngest thus far, a 14-year-old, all testing positive for COVID-19. The local hospital here is still waiting for the results of 12 specimens as of yesterday's press release, and these confirmed cases are in isolation, though it isn't clear if that's isolation at the hospital or isolation at the designated Canoa Hotel. The governor's office telling KUAM that they will absolutely be not doing any home isolation of any positive cases, and the task force sharing with us that some of the cases did have travel history while others do not, showing evidence of community spread. And again, as reported on this special report on containing COVID-19, Guam Public Health Director Linda DeNorsi tells us that 5 tests are set aside for the NMI per day on Guam, in addition to those which might be sent off island. We also obtained new information overnight that a number of quarantine travelers will be transferred from the designated Canoa Hotel to Pacific Islands Club Resort for more precautionary measures. I spoke to one of the quarantine travelers who is being transferred, and he told me that low-risk quarantine travelers are going to be transferred to PIC Resort. Meanwhile, as we also reported last night, effective April 6th or April 30th, United Airlines will be suspending flights between the NMI and Guam at the request of CNMI Governor Ralph Torres. The last flight between the islands is this Sunday. And also last night, some new information, Star Marianas is joining that decision. They announced yesterday that at the request of the governor and the mayors of Rota and the mayor of Tinian, Star Marianas Air will temporarily suspend its scheduled flight services between the islands for commercial passengers. So that's the latest in containing COVID-19 in the NMI.
What about like mail and medevac? Is that still?
United Airlines and I believe in Star Marianas' announcement, they said that they're still going to conduct those essential medical services and assist in anything related to COVID-19 as well with their airline. We also received some press releases shared the other day from CPA saying that air shipment of cargo services to and from Guam and within the CNMI is also provided by Micronesian Air Cargo, and that the U.S. Postal Service's air shipment of cargo to and from Guam and medevac transport for health emergencies will not be disrupted by the temporary suspension. So I think for the most part it is just affecting the commercial passengers.
Has there been any information for the people that are traveling from Guam into the CNMI within this tight window? You know, you mentioned that the flights are going to be canceled or suspended starting Monday, I believe. So the people that are traveling back to the CNMI in between this time, are they going to be subject to any sort of quarantine?
So my understanding as it still stands is that anyone entering still is subject to that quarantine,
okay,
whether a CNMI resident or, for some reason still a tourist making their way here. And so that's the latest information. I think we also shared in the newscast last night or the day before that if you absolutely need to make it, you should call United right away. And
right. I wonder how that worked out because imagine all the people who were like, oh my God, I got to get back to Guam, or vice versa. So I wonder how fast that plane filled up if it wasn't already full.
Yeah, those are numbers I'm interested in too. I think right now the latest numbers show there are at least 100 people, travelers in quarantine. We haven't received any specific word in terms of whether or not some are exhibiting symptoms or things like that. But for the most part, the quarantine definitely remains in effect. And I think one of the biggest things is that, the governor's office sharing with us yesterday is that home isolation is not going to be done for any positive cases, which I know is often a question that is asked by the community. We also tried to get information on the villages. They cited HIPAA, saying that they can't release that, and then after, kind of asking for just general regions of the island, they said they're going to go ahead and ask our local hospital to look into that for us.
Right. And like we were talking, Tomas, the other night, we kind of here on Guam laid out through the way that the media has been reporting on this COVID-19. What is acceptable? We also, I know made the ask. The mayors are making that ask about can we get the villages. I don't think they're going to budge on that, and so I think with the doctors, the mayors, and it seems like so long ago, Brie, it was just a couple weeks ago. Everybody and their Nino was writing letters. Calling for more transparency in the COVID-19 response, and I don't know if I could say they made great strides because there wasn't a lot of transparency, and so now what we get with these demographic breakdowns, I think really puts people somewhat, maybe a little more at ease to know at least the region.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Bree and Chris, one question that I've asked now several times, and I think it's one of the first questions I asked the office here once I landed on island, is what happens for cases on Rota and Tinian? I know that there are no confirmed cases there, but I think that if we need to have an answer for that now, and it's something I resent my question to the spokesperson, and I'm hoping to provide my family on Rota and my friends on Tinian some insight about what happens. How prepared are we if we are going to have confirmed cases on Rota and Tinian? Are they going to be flown to Saipan? Do we have the capacity there on Rota and Tinian to do that? Are they going to be flown to Guam? As I pointed yesterday, that last situational report we saw shows that Rota has one ventilator and no listed ventilators for Tinian. So I personally am trying to get the answer to that question because I know a lot of people tuning in from Rota and Tinian also want to know what the capacity is if there are confirmed cases, just for preparation.
Maybe we should split it like anybody in Rota, they can come to Guam, Tinian, they go to Saipan. You know what I mean? Because of the geographic
closeness. Get some answer soon about that. And
right.
yeah, I should also mention that Directive 14 was released by the governor's office yesterday too, announcing that effective immediately all business engaged in gaming, including the casino, video poker establishments, and e-gaming facilities, and recreation and amusement facilities will be shut down. So I know that in a previous report we were talking about those poker parlors being open, and so this new directive
kind of seems like it would be a vector with all the touching that goes on in the game rooms and the poker rooms. I mean, just people touching their greasy face and touching them buttons and touching their crack pipe and then touching the buttons.
What about the grab and go program? I'm not sure if you mentioned that. Is it still a go inside Rota?
So it's suspended now for all three islands as of yesterday. I think it's worth mentioning. I've tried to call the Commissioner of Education and also the Child Nutrition Program that the press release provided them number for. I haven't heard back yet, but as I shared yesterday through our chats, the Grab and Go Meal Program is now suspended for all three islands.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I'm not sure if it's until further notice or just they're not going to revisit it or not. But that's the official case here, and I know. Some folks were really relying on that, but also balancing the safety of some folks who might, want to leave their home at this time.
Tomas, one of the things that was kind of alarming was that positive COVID-19 case, a 14-year-old in a Saipan. I know you're not getting much information, but is there anything else you can tell us about that? Maybe even what are people saying about that?
Chris, there's nothing confirmed. I know in this time there's a lot of things on WhatsApp that's being forwarded, but at this time we just know that it's that 14-year-old girl. There hasn't been a press conference as of Monday, that last one that we reported on, so we don't know more. We don't know if these new 3 specific cases, other than the deceased man, had contact with the first 2. We don't know, again, if it's related to that faith-based organization or not. We're not getting any official word on that at all. Though I think it's also interesting to point out that the mayor of Tinian released something on March 31st saying that members of a community associated with a faith-based group in Tinian are being attacked on social media. And within the community, he put out this brief press release condemning those actions, and how pointing out that the virus does not distinguish between ethnicity or faith or nationality. It can affect anyone, is what he writes. Mayor Don writes that, encouraging everyone, again, to stay home and social distance. So, we don't know. I know, Bree, you asked that question in the press conference, and the governor, said that he could and could not confirm what could or could not be, right? That was
Yeah, for the most part.
What?
Yeah.
Could not confirm what could or
basically,
could not.
yeah, that's basically what he said. You can't, we don't want to go around saying, spreading misinformation or whatever. But yeah, he wouldn't answer that directly, whether or not it was linked to the faith-based organization.
Right.
Because there's only, at the time, there were only 2 positive cases, and the contact didn't come from the hospital, according to Dr. Beth Conan.
Right. Tommaso, what do you make of the home isolation? That's kind of been a real anxiety point for people here on Guam. And that's kind of also brought on the mayors asking to be informed if there are COVID-19 patients in their villages. Would you say maybe the NMI ahead of Guam on that curve, and that you guys are putting all COVID-19 positives in these isolation facilities, as opposed to sending them home like we do here?
Yeah, I think that definitely is something that was new last night. That was passed on to KUAM. I do know that. I'm not sure. I heard that there were 4 hotels now being used, but so far, right now, all that was sent to me specifically was about Kanoa and PIC, and I think the travelers being moved was definitely something that was, not expected. We did ask how the facilities were being monitored. They said there's 24-hour monitoring at those facilities that are there, and also separation through the different hotel floors and rooms. I should also mention that the Department of Fire and Emergency Medical Services is expanding their personnel as a part of the task force here in the CNMI. And so some of their primary objectives on the front lines is to transport passengers, the remaining passengers, from the airport to the designated hotels, escort the passengers to the assigned rooms, deliver drop-off items into the rooms for any POI cases, and then they're also tasked with decontaminating everything after drop-off, assisting THC medical personnel, and then also conducting secondary health assessment for all passengers. So, there seems to be a full force. I also saw last night that, some people were cited for being out after the curfew time. So, again, the curfew is expanded to everyone except frontliners and those in private sectors on duty. But
what time is that curfew? Again, if you guys are just tuning in the NMI, they have instituted a curfew for everybody.
Yeah, so that's 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. And as we've been reporting, there are some exceptions to that as well. Mm-hmm. But I saw yesterday folks commenting in different news stories that they're definitely taking that seriously, and people are being cited. So we can confirm that.
Tomas, if you could provide clarification, you mentioned the Kanoa Resort and you mentioned PIC. Are they separating now quarantine and isolation? Like, one is an isolation facility and the other one is a quarantine facility? Because, early on, everybody was being transported to Kanoa Resort, whether you were in isolation or whether you were in quarantine.
Yeah, I asked that question to ask. Like I said, the person who I spoke with, who was being transferred to PIC, one of the quarantine travelers told me that low-risk quarantine travelers are being transferred. I asked the governor's office, and their response was, I'll just read it, quote, "They're isolated. I'll leave it at that. Can't divulge any further." So, again, I don't know. One would, Dr. Beth Conan at that Monday press, we keep citing this Monday press conference. It's the last we've heard. So,
yeah.
At the Monday press conference, Dr. Beth Conan, the medical doctor at the local hospital, says that if patients need help, they'll be at the hospital, because Kanoa Resort is not a hospital. So, folks can kind of make what they do with that information, but at this time we don't know if there are specific cases just for isolation and just for quarantine. But things have obviously changed with, the situation.
Okay. Well, thanks, Tomas. You be safe over there.
Wash your hands, boy.
Thanks. I will, and encourage everyone to. Again, I've got to thank all the frontliners, especially here in the NMI, dealing with this situation now. That's really great. So we appreciate everyone, from the first responders to the medical workers, and we hope that we can get more supplies and PPE for them through the government, through private sector, whatever it is. We want to make sure they're safe too,
All right, Tomas. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Okay,
Have a good
take
day.
care.
Tomas Manglona reporting for us over in Saipan. Of course, he was a university student in California, and all the classes have been moved online. So one of the first things he did was get his dog in home.
Yep, and he's been taking classes early in the morning.
Right. So he's taking the online classes in the
And
hot
then-
room. He was telling me.
Yeah, and
He's
he's
like-
helping us out, keeping an
Yeah.
eye on what's happening over there in the CNMI.
Right. 7:40. We're doing news. Take a little break, and I think we're.